Thank you for coming. We are at the Oklahoma Territorial Sports Museum, and if you haven't been here, you definitely need to come. There's so much to see, no matter what sport you like, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, rodeo. Mr. Richard has plenty of things that you would love to see, and they have a special exhibit right now on Babe Ruth. If you haven't been here, June and July is the perfect time to come because thanks to John Vance, admission is free. They will always take donations, but June and July is a great time to come by, and you can come see the art exhibit on Babe Ruth. Anytime we can claim anything Babe Ruth, we're going to do that. So we're going to get started tonight. We're going to start with Kara Sawyer, who is a representative that's running for Democratic, to be the representative of the Democratic on the House District 31. Each candidate will have 2 minutes of an opening statement, 2 minutes to answer each question, and then a 2-minute closing statement. And I have a timer, and I'm not afraid to use it. So go for it. Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Oh, and we're going to thank Chris Evans, Guthrie News page, for being here to be our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. I'm not going to say Walters. I'm going to say Sawyer.
That's okay. It was Walters. Now it's Sawyer,
yes,
for all those that are voting.
I've known you for a long time, so it's still hard. But Kara will be obviously on the June 26th ballot, just a few short days on Tuesday. There will be another name on the ballot, but her opponent has dropped out and has endorsed Kara, so we will probably likely see you in November, but with that, we will get started.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I appreciate that.
I'm going to exit stage left and let you stay up front here, but first off, would you please introduce yourself and what compelled you to seek office?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you've already heard it's Kara Sawyer. Please note that for all of those of you that are out there watching and those of you in here know this, that yes, my name has been Kara Walters for the last 17 years, and I was privileged to be able to get married in November, and so my name has changed to Sawyer, and that's been my biggest hurdle in this whole campaign, so not a bad hurdle to have, I would say. So my introduction to you, most of you all have heard enough now that you do know who I am. I'm an educator. I'm a special education teacher here in Guthrie. I have just finished up my 4th year back. I started 17 years ago in this community right out of college, and then in there took a little bit of break, did some nonprofit work, and went back to education, like I said, 4 years ago. I can tell you a lot of things about me. You really want to ask your questions, so I want to get to that. But what compelled me to run for office, first and foremost, was the teacher walkout. And what that meant for me was prior to the walkout, there were some discussions about what we were needing and some discrepancies that we were enduring and a lot of struggles that we were enduring as teachers and for our students. And so I had been involved in some conversations for the last year and a half with other coworkers and hearing things around the state. And realistically what happened was, and this is not something that I think everybody knows, and that is that there was a grassroots effort of teachers that tried to get some legislation passed. And they spent a lot of time and energy trying to get that done. And unfortunately, they weren't met with a lot of support from our legislature. So consequently, prior to April 2nd, which was the walkout, there was a movement, if you will, and joined forces with what you all would have seen on television, the Oklahoma Educators Association, the union, that some of us are a member of. They became our support in the backing of what the efforts were. And so going through that, is that my timer already? It is. Oh, wow. My flat out statement is what compelled me is experiencing that our legislature didn't listen and didn't offer any suggestions. So I decided to step up and try to do it myself and with the help of other people that are running for office.
Thought there might be some education questions or some topics.
I'm going to move up here if that's all right.
And we will definitely get to some education questions here in a minute, but let's start off with some budget questions first. We're all aware of the what some say a dire situation currently with our state budget. Specifically, what revenue streams do you support for correcting the problems, and what is, if any, specific program would you cut?
Okay. So because I come from an education standpoint, I think the first and foremost thing that has to be looked at is within our own department, the State Department of Education. And I can give you an anecdotal story. It takes longer than 2 minutes to do that, but just seeing with my own eyes all the restrictions that we have to follow and adopting new policies and new curriculum. There was a lot of talk about old textbooks, but there wasn't a lot of talk that a lot of curriculum has to come down mandated to us every 2 or 3 years that we're required to purchase as a school district. And that comes from the State Department, which sometimes comes from the federal government. To me, I don't want to call it wasteful spending. I'm going to say that's not always is the newest, latest, greatest thing, the best thing to just jump in and go forward with. So I think we look within our own State Department of Education to start with, because to me it starts at home. In addition to that, I got the privilege of hearing Mr. Drew Edmondson running for governor last night, and he said something that I've been saying for the last few weeks on the campaign trail, and that's the GPT, gross production tax. It needs to be raised back to 7%. That's what it was before. I've seen information from the very man who lobbied to get that reduced down to 2%. He's now on the side of it needs to go back up. We've seen that it was done in a way to benefit the oil companies because we weren't sure if that was going to be a proper procedure and if it was going to work. It worked. So now it needs to go back up to that 7%. So, and please understand, educate yourselves and research what happens when it goes up to the 5% and that it's only in the first 3 years. There's a lot of that it's just easy to say it needs to go back up, but there's reasons behind that. And then last, I would say I am a proponent that the tobacco tax should have been $1.50 that we asked for and not $1. Just that extra 50 cents would generate enough funds. And I have been told, is my time up? Not yet. I've been told, or I've read things that say, had the GPT tax gone back to 7%, very likely that would have fully funded what we were asking for. And I say we, what the teachers were asking for. So those are just a few.
Thank you. And remind our audience, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, we do have some index cards. If you want to fill that out, we'll be glad to hopefully get to most of your questions. Next question. In the same manner of a business or a family would have to do, is there any way you could do a department by department, line by line current budget for the state?
Well, I agree with that. As a family, you operate on a budget. I don't know anybody that can't operate on a budget. Absolutely, we need to start. It should already be in place. To me, it is. I mean, I believe that's what we hire, or we've elected. I say hire because that's what I feel like I'm doing, is being hired for a job. The elected officials, there is a budget in place, and there has to be transparency. If there's somewhere that we don't feel like there's not transparency, then we the people have elected officials that should be asking those questions. So absolutely. I heard the other night the gentleman that were speaking for the Republican Forum, the term used, an open checkbook online. I agree with that. I mean, as stewards of our money, that needs to be in place. And so, yes, I think if we're going to educate our families to operate fiduciarily responsible, then we as a state should be doing that exact same thing. You lead by example. So,
thank you. All right, here's some education questions I think you might be able to handle. How would you handle the current teacher pay crisis? Was the teacher walkout a success? And please share your thoughts on the group Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite, who argue against the bill that would increase teachers' salaries by an average of $6,100 with the tax increase that was passed earlier this year.
Okay, I cannot possibly answer all that in 2 minutes. I'll just say. How to handle the current teacher crisis, it's been talked about enough. I think that we all know it's law that the teacher pay raises will be paid, but where the money comes from has been in limbo. There were things repealed immediately within 72 hours that take that funding away. And to me, the biggest issue that I have with that is if the law is in place to fund it, to pay, and we start taking away the revenue pieces, then that means other entities will have to be cut and will suffer budget cuts in order to pay for the lawful pay raises. So I'm not okay with that. And I've said this to every door that I've been to when they ask me this question. I am not okay knowing that an Oklahoma Highway Patrolman or somebody from the fire department or whatever services, Department of Mental Health, that somebody would be cut in order for me to get my $6,100 pay raise. And I can tell you there's no other teacher that would agree with that either. We're not comfortable with that. The second part of that question was?
Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite.
Oklahoma Taxpayers Unite. Without going way in depth with that, the thing that concerns me is that the way that they're proposing it is it's taxation without representation. Folks, that's what we elected our officials to do. And for the first time, They voted over 75%, which is what the law says, and they represented us as the people. I would challenge, I guess, that I guess this is my significant challenge, is that when it was taken to a vote, only one person voted no against that measure, not the Taxpayers Unite, but the funding of it. And so that one representative was our representative. And I'd like to know where the statistics for all of us as constituents came from that we said no to that. So consequently, it was voted on by the people we elected. That is more than 75%. And so it is taxation with representation. It was done by our representatives.
Timer malfunction. All right, thank you. Next question kind of ties in a little bit with that as well, so you can probably continue. What is your plan to find funding to allocate public education, including per pupil funding and teacher salaries? What specific revenue streams or changes would you promote or support?
Well, I alluded to it in the beginning about looking within the State Department ourselves, the GPT tax, the tobacco tax. I know that the conversation about taxes is such a hot topic. All I can tell you as your representative, my job is to represent you. If you invest in me with your vote and you decide to elect me to become the representative for you, then that's exactly what I will be. So if you tell me that if the constituents, the majority agree that they don't want to raise taxes, then we have to look at other funding sources. Specifically with that, I'm concerned about the issue that we put forth a proposal, the teachers with the union put forth a proposal early on, and yes, not another thing was gained in that teacher walkout after it was passed. We didn't gain anything, but the success of it, which goes back to the question of the teacher walkout, which is why I'm running, the success of the walkout showed you that the people we have elected, the majority of the people we have elected, are not representing us. I think it's across the board, people are acknowledging that they're not representing us. And so if you want change, and if you want somebody who will listen to you and doesn't go with their own agenda of saying, this is what I think it has to be and this is what I'm gonna fight for, I'm gonna fight for you and for your voice across the board. Does not matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, across the board. So I don't have all the answers. I will never claim to have all the answers, but I can promise you I will seek out the people that can provide options and work all the way across the board to get things done. We have to change.
Thank you. What is your stance on school vouchers and charter schools?
School vouchers and charter schools. So I did a little bit of research on school vouchers just because I think it's something that gets talked about, but we don't really know the in-depth of it. School vouchers were created originally to give parents the option, and it was actually in the 60s when they first came on board. Believe it or not, I didn't know that they were back then. They were created for segregation, to allow people to segregate and choose where they wanted to go for those purposes. In 2005, I believe my research is right, that changed that mentality, and it is non-discriminatory. So the purpose of a voucher is if you are not satisfied with the education that your child is getting in whatever environment they're in, you have the choice. Well, I still believe you have the choice without a voucher. My concern with the voucher is that it takes an amount. We're already struggling as a state. We're already struggling to fund what it takes to educate our children. So if you start allocating a per dollar, per pupil amount to say they can go wherever they want, that takes from one pot, but it's, I don't know how I want to say this, the distribution of it or the ramifications of it can be significant to public education. I think that would be all I have to say about it at the moment. That's a hot topic, so.
Yes. All right, thank you. On Tuesday, we can say Tuesday now, June 26th, voters will vote on State Question 788, better known as medical marijuana. Many believe this measure will pass and will help adults and children with their medical needs, but others believe the measure is not only for medical marijuana, but recreational marijuana or leading up to it. What is your position on this important matter?
Okay. So I've read through the entire state question 788, and I encourage every single person to do that, because it will answer the questions that you have that we're hearing from all different sides. First and foremost, I am for the passage of medical marijuana. There is research showing, and there are absolute benefits that can be obtained by individuals who have not otherwise been able to get the care that they need, whether it be from medication, opioid drugs, other things. There are absolute benefits to medical marijuana. I read through it, like I said, and there is enough stipulation that doesn't concern me. What concerns me is saying things. I heard the other night a statement, and to me it's a scare tactic, or it's fear, to say that a 16-year-old would take their medical marijuana license and go to their doctor and get marijuana prescribed for a hangnail. There's a lot of things that concern me with that. First and foremost, your 16-year-old cannot go to a doctor and get a prescription without the parent's signature, parent being there. I worked in a medical office, I know that. So that's a falsity. And two, if your child is going to a doctor for a hangnail and your doctor would prescribe that, I think I'd get a different doctor. Because I don't know about you, but I believe in my medical professionals. And I believe they went to school and they are capable of prescribing the medications that would be needed. That's why we entrust, it's called health care. We are in their health care. And so I agree wholeheartedly. I don't believe that it's our business to step in and be between what a doctor and patient agree to. I have lots of statistics, but the one thing that I would say is that there's topic of the concern of revenue. Right now it stands in the bill that it would be 7% taxed, and 75% of the first part of that money will go to the Regulatory Commission, which will be established. After that, 75% will go to the General Revenue Fund, which is solely earmarked for common education, and the other 25% goes to the Oklahoma State Department of Health and is solely earmarked for drug and alcohol rehabilitation. So please read it. Please read it. Don't just take what you hear or get in the mail. Read it. It didn't take me very long to read it.
Thank you. We've moved right along to our final question before your closing statement.
Okay.
Where do you stand on the Second Amendment? Will you defend it? And have you ever fired a firearm? And when was the last time you fired a gun?
Okay, so where do I stand on the Second Amendment?
Yes.
Will I protect it? Have I fired a firearm? And when was the last time?
Yeah.
Great question. Absolutely, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe wholeheartedly that you have the right to bear an arm. It's in the Constitution. I believe it. I also believe that I have a right not to bear an arm. And so, by that, I can tell you the conversations that we can have about arming teachers, all the different things that are hot topic with that. I don't believe that you have the right to tell me to bear an arm as a teacher. That's not what that's not what I go to work for. In the fact that I believe in your right to bear an arm, I believe that we do not have a gun control issue. We do have a mental health issue, and that is not lip service. If you look across all of the mass shootings and the things that are happening, time and time and time again, it's coming back to the signs and symptoms that people missed, or they knew were there and they overlooked them. That is a mental health issue. I look at a gun the same way I look at a car. What you do with your car can make it turn into something of detriment, and the same with a gun. So I will absolutely protect the Second Amendment. I have fired a firearm, mostly for my own education. It was probably 17 years ago, and I do not mind sharing a kind of an open book that I am an open book. I was a victim of violent gun violence at the age of 17, and I had a gun held to my head during I was at work, and that will change your life. It will honestly change your life. I have not allowed it to destroy my life, but it changed my life in the aspect that I don't have a need for a gun. But if you do, I'll protect that right. But I do get discouraged when someone sees that as, because I don't own a gun, I haven't shot one lately, I don't, that I'm against the Second Amendment. Absolutely not. Not at all.
Thank you. And make sure there's no handwritten questions from anybody in the audience. All right. Appreciate all of your answers, and now we'll give you a final few minutes here to wrap it up and give us your final thoughts.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Well, that went by really fast, and 2 minutes do go by really fast each time. So, I started out by telling you that I'm an educator, and I've told you that I've done some other things in the community. And this is what I would tell all of you here that have not heard me before, and those of you at home that are watching. I absolutely love the community of Guthrie. I love the surrounding communities of Cashin, Mulhall, Crescent, even the ones that are not in our district. It doesn't matter. We are a community. Logan County is a great community. And I have lived the last 17 years with the #1 mission, and that is to give back to my community. I have always felt that I've given back in my job, whatever it was, whether it was with the Red Cross, when I ran a program for the mental health and substance abuse services for youth, or as a teacher. Every day I go to work to give back to my community in one way or another. Yes, the teacher walkout happened. It created a movement in me like never before. And this is the time that I have found that I can, again, if you invest in me with your vote, and I am elected as your representative, I will get up every day and it will be my job, whether we're in session or we're not, that I will work for you as the community. I will have open forums, I will have coffee, whatever needs to take place, I will be an open door. You can ask me any question and I will not pretend to know all the answers whatsoever. Those days of an agenda or of somebody only representing a small few can be gone. And I believe I'm that person. There are many of you in this room that have lived with me for the last 17 years, and I feel like you can attest to my dedication. But I am hopeful. I'm hopeful for what's about to happen. And I just ask that you, Democrat or Republican, you research all of us, and you decide based on the person and what they've done and what they'll continue to do. So my slogan is Rise Up, One United Voice. I believe that's what we can do and become one united voice. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you. Chris, you have a new career as a moderator. I've watched you several times now.
It's my third time. I'm almost a veteran now. Kara, thank you for being here tonight, and everyone give her a nice round of applause.
Thanks.